So sometime late last week, one of my lovely patrons, I believe, linked me this Twitter thread on my server. The tweet reads, by Sophie Hagen, right, is anyone currently working on getting this piece of shit Cancer Research UK advert removed from everywhere? Is there something I can sign? How the fucking fuck is this okay? Now this is the sign. If you fill in the gaps, it reads simply, obesity is a cause of cancer. You've got to think, what on earth is wrong with that statement to trigger Sophie Hagen so much? Well, if we read her tweets, and you can absolutely go away in terms of trying to excuse it, society viewing fatness as a negative thing is a thing that kills more than the cancer that you might get due to maybe something to do with you possibly weighing more than a certain weight. Possibly, maybe. Is it me, or does Miss Hagen sound a tad triggered? Perhaps she's taken something to heart here because the word obesity has been used, and she's taken it upon herself to assume this means anyone that is overweight in the slightest. She continues, and BMI has been debunked decades ago. It's not a valid way of measuring anything. We will address BMI soon. On the contrary, dieting has been proved time and time again to be one of the worst things you can do to your body. This is the difficult one. If you're arguing from the position of dieting as dieting to get to a goal, yes. If it is a lifestyle choice you make to look after yourself, it is then not considered dieting but, well, looking after yourself. Not letting go of yourself to the point where your body starts to fail, because that will happen. I think enough people can say that from experience. We all have our own lived experiences after all. Your campaign is so damaging and fat-shaming, and I really hope it gets taken down. I disagree. I hope it stays. I am sick and tired of journalists reporting there being an obesity problem with children, but stopping with adults and calling it body positivity, when there are obvious medical concerns raised for being a certain weight that is far too big for your natural frame to hold, so obese. And we could talk all day about whether BMI is accurate or not. I obviously think it's inaccurate. It is still not a valid point when you are, if you are, what is considered severely obese, and it should be means assessed, of course, to the point where you are slower, where you aren't healthy as you could be. And I'm not now preaching to people that they should all live healthy lives. You do what you want, but there are consequences. And nobody should be made to shut up when they point out the consequences to you. Now, I do want to talk about this because I think Miss Hagen has taken this a bit too far with how triggered she got. So first thing I want to do is look at an article by Cancer Research UK, which says how being overweight causes cancer. Extra fat in the body can have harmful effects, like producing hormones and growth factors that affect the way our cells work. This can raise the risk of several diseases, including cancer. It's thought that more than 1 in 20 cancers in the UK are linked to being overweight or obese. And there's a video linked below. I'm not going to play it. I don't need that kind of copyright trouble. But there is an interesting image here. Being overweight can cause 13 types of cancer, all of which I consider to be quite fascinating. And I'm looking forward to seeing when the number of linked cases are currently being calculated and will be available in 2018, because I don't see it here. Now, I know you have taken offense to this because of BMI. Well, let's just scrub BMI entirely, shall we? Let's pretend it doesn't exist. Let's say you are average height, right? And you consider yourself healthy, and you're stood next to somebody who is, let's say, 50% smaller than you, but not anorexic. What separates you? And this is where mitigating factors come into it. For example, and the best example I can pull from this is when people thought they had an anorexic model promoting protein world, only to find out she was actually just a vegan. She was healthy. It's not fat shaming either, but I know some people accused people of that. But how many fat vegans have you ever seen? They're not common. I want to continue with the Cancer Research UK reading, because I think this is quite fascinating. What leads people to being overweight or obese? Simply put, obesity is the result of taking in more calories in your diet than you are burning through physical activity. There are some circumstances where this isn't entirely the case. For example, you could be sedentary all day long and still burn thousands. If you're in, for example, a very cold environment, your body burns more as it tries to keep the engine going. I learnt that on Top Gear. Bring back Jeremy Clarkson. There is nothing unreasonable about that. Just to make it clear, if you are not doing enough to burn the calories, you're going to put on weight. Eventually. You can claim to have a high metabolism all you want. Eventually your body's just going to go, you know what? No, we're done. It's time for you to have some rolls. Which, by the way, if you can press a finger into your stomach and fold skin over, repeatedly, that's not healthy. I know there are going to be some skinny people who do it now and say, oh, I can do it if I pinch my skin. Don't. When you start to look like the Michelin Man or the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, you're no longer healthy. And it is not fat shaming to point this out, that it is not healthy. But again, and I have to point this out as well, it is a personal choice. But you live with the consequences of that. It is down to people and companies and charities who do this on a regular basis to point out there is a way to negate some or reduce the possibility of falling ill to this. And if you want to live a long, healthy life, then you should. And I want to read one more little tweet because I think this is relevant. And I'm not buying into fat being unhealthy. It's not inherently unhealthy, and even if it was, fat people can do whatever the fuck they want with their health. But if I did pretend to accept that, your arguments are still fucked up. You just hate fat people, which shows to me this one alone, this one response, that you are not a reasonable, rational person who could have a reasonable, rational discussion about this. Instead, you just don't like the idea that weight is being brought into it. Maybe someone has mentioned it to you in the past that your weight might be an issue. I have no idea. I can't see enough of you in the picture on your Twitter to tell whether or not you're as big as I think you are, or whether you're just lashing out for virtue's sake. So, because I want to continue with understanding Cancer Research UK's position, I want to read another passage from the Obesity, Weight and Cancer, How Being Overweight Causes Cancer segment. How could obesity lead to cancer? It's very clear that there is a link between cancer and obesity, but it's still not completely understood how exactly obesity causes cancer. Research so far has identified 3 leading explanations. It's helpful to start by knowing what fat is and what it does in the body. Fat in the body has 2 main functions. It acts as a store of energy, and it's constantly spreading information and instructions to the rest of the body. These messages affect things like cell growth, chemical reaction in cells, and the body's reproductive cycle. So fat doesn't just sit there doing nothing, which is kind of ironic with a lot of people who are morbidly obese, right? I know, fat joke, shouldn't have done it, but honestly, I couldn't resist. It's active, telling your cells what to do, and if there is too much fat in the body, then the signals it sends around the body can cause damage. It's likely that this is how obesity raises the risk of cancer. The 3 main points. Growth hormones. Too much body fat can cause levels of insulin and other growth factors to rise, which can tell cells to divide more often, mitosis. This raises the chance that cells will change and lead to cancer. I want to see a study, actually, that'd be interesting. Inflammation. When there are more fat cells in the body, specialized immune cells go to the area, possibly to remove dead and dying fat cells. They release a cocktail of chemicals called cytokines, which can lead to inflammation. This makes cells divide faster, and when this happens over a long time, it can raise the risk of cancer. And sex hormones. After the menopause, estrogen made by fat cells can make cells divide faster in the breasts and womb, 2 of the cancer types most closely linked to obesity, increasing the risk of cell faults and cancer. Now finally, because I don't want to be a completely biased dick, I do want to touch upon the subject of, does avoiding weight gain or losing weight decrease the risk of cancer? And there's a link to Cancer.gov in the description. Most of the data about whether avoiding weight gain or losing weight reduces cancer risk comes from cohort and case control studies. As with observational studies of obesity and cancer risk, these studies can be difficult to interpret because people who lose weight or avoid weight gain may differ in other ways from people who do not. Nevertheless, when the evidence from multiple observational studies is consistent, the association is more likely to be real. Many observational studies have provided consistent evidence that people who have lower weight gain during adulthood have lower risks of colon cancer, kidney cancer, and for postmenopausal women, breast, endometrial, and ovarian cancer. Fewer studies have examined possible associations between weight loss and cancer risk. Some of these have found decreased risks of breast, endometrial, colon, and prostate cancers among people who have lost weight. However, most of these studies were not able to evaluate whether the weight loss was intentional or unintentional, and possibly related to underlying health problems. So as far as this particular subject goes, it is considered somewhat inconclusive for the time being, but I would still recommend, if you are someone who fits into the category of severely obese, that if you are interested in understanding cancer and how it could possibly affect you, that you look at Cancer Research UK, Cancer.gov. There are many other websites you can check out, and charities, in fact, you can get information from. Now, to end on a slightly happier note, Magog and I have had a little conversation, and we've agreed to collaborate on a video. We found the video, we're looking at it, and we should have something for you very, very soon. So I hope you all have a lovely day, and thank you all for listening.